Hi everyone, I'm about to run an interview with Neal Foster, Dell's Executive Director of Enterprise Mobility Solutions, talking about mission critical government and military use of Android. It is a fascinating interview, but there are a few places where sound drops off because of the network connection with Skype. I just ask that you be patient and let it go. It'll be a second or two when you hear the drop off and the interview continues. But it's well worth it because he's a really interesting guy. Anyway, here's the full interview. Is Android secure enough for mission-critical government and military use? I'm David Gewirtz, and joining me is Neal Foster, Dell's Executive Director of Enterprise Mobility Solutions. He says, yes. Hey there everyone, I'm David Gewirtz, and I am joined by Neal Foster. Hey there Neal, how are you?
Hey David, how are you?
Good. So as this is our second official show, so there's always a possibility once again that I'll push the wrong buttons and still trying to figure out the studio, so bear with me. This should be a fun and informal conversation, so we're just going to run through a bunch of questions. I've talked to other ZDNet editors to get their feel for what would be an interesting set of questions as well, so I have a few of their questions. And I guess we should get started. So let's start with the obvious question. Android's been getting a pretty bad reputation for security malware. Is it actually possible to have a secure Android device?
Yes, it is. And the ability for Android as an open source platform to provide OEMs such as Dell to create a security platform is very, very strong, right? So because of Android's flexibility and openness, we're actually able to create a platform that leverages the capabilities underlying and augment that to close down any of the security vulnerabilities or threats. So yes, definitely.
Cool. All right. So before we go any further, let's talk about you. What's your background and your role at Dell?
Sure. So I'm the executive director for mobility solutions within Dell. If you take Dell as a leading IT provider for solutions, my role in the organization is actually to go build out the mobility angle, of that, really extending Dell's platform and of solutions and portfolio of devices to be able to take them into an enterprise from a mobility standpoint. That encompasses, three of the main kind of IT pain points that we're seeing across enterprises today when you consider mobility. One's around security, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in depth today. The others are on manageability and be able to bring devices into a workplace and make applications and data available to employees. And the third is actually enabling the expansive use of more applications outside of just email and PIM, but extending to more business critical applications.
Cool. So how is Android used in secure government environments?
Great. So, smartphones today, it's actually whether in the government or within any of the enterprise environments, smartphones are used today for specifically email and PIM. And then now that there are open platforms to leverage things like invoice reporting and back networking and other corporate data, access to other corporate data and business process, smartphones are now being used for more and more. In the government, we've been working pretty closely with various groups within the government sector, is to take the capabilities of the smartphone and make them available to people, whether in theater or for official use, within the more administrative staff within the government. So we're seeing people take our Dell devices into theater deployments out in remote locations, taking pictures and imaging, uploading them securely to back networks that can check when insurgents are popping up or different threats are popping up within the theater. And then also for basic communications and being able to provide email kind of connectivity and data connectivity, collaborating and sharing files and those kind of things are typically the uses we're seeing now.
Cool. Oops, there we go. Now it's better. So when you're talking about Android devices in with Dell, are we talking about just phones? Are we talking about tablets? Or are we talking about Android on any other kind of hardware? What exactly are you putting Android on?
So when we consider mobility as a whole, we have devices that actually include both Android and Windows. So when we think of mobility solutions, we're contemplating kind of these different platforms. From an Android standpoint, we're looking at both smartphones and tablets.
Cool.
Smartphones, including a voice component, and we have our Street 5-inch device actually has a voice capability, so you can it's actually kind of a smartphone the size in a small tablet form factor. Then we also have our 10-inch tablets and so on.
Yeah, we did. I think one of the ZDNet people wrote a review that said that was essentially a phone that was half an inch bigger than a phone that was called a tablet, and why is it called a tablet instead of a phone? And it was a kind of a fun piece, and it's cool stuff. So let's talk specifically about what did Dell do to make it secure enough to operate on DoD networks. Is this technology available to other Android vendors, or is this your own secret sauce?
Right now it's our own secret sauce. What we've done, if you take Dell's approach to solutions, we work pretty closely with our customers to go build out the end-to-end capability that's needed. So that involves kind of the actual hardening of the device itself, meaning going down to the underlying Linux kernel, adding levels of encryption and security down there. It also involves kind of the management of the device and being able to set security policies from a remote console. So device management capabilities had to be added. And then it's also around the business process for how you go do things like provisioning a device to be used inside the government. And then also when a device needs to be destroyed or for any reason, how you actually go wipe all of the information off of that device so it can't be it can't end up in the wrong person's hands. So if you look at it, it's a kind of an end-to-end process kind of thing that we had to look at. We also had to go down underneath to the Linux kernel, add a lot of encryption and some extra security kind of policy controls within the Android platform. And then the device sits in an end-to-end solution that could be managed by a remote console. So it's all those kind of aspects we had to go look at.
So do you perceive this as your own operating system, kind of like the Kindle Fire is Android just because that's what they started with, but they ended up with something entirely different at the other end? Are you pretty much starting with Android as like, okay, this is our starting base of ingredients, and from then on we're making our own thing?
No, we're very much building on Android. This is an Android platform. We're complying with all of the Android APIs and the conformance test suites that you need to do to be a part of the Android community within Google. We've done is we've extended kind of the base Android platform to add extra security layers, but the core Android is still there. We've gone through and made sure that we comply and organize around not fragmenting the Android platform. It's very important for Dell to make sure that we can leverage the platform and the kind of the ecosystem and community that Google's building around it. So we're pretty much looking at kind of extending, not so much rewriting and creating our own fragmented platform.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about our brave troops in harm's way. What expanded capabilities does this platform you're building give the soldier on the ground? And are we talking specifically about infantry, or are you looking at soldiers in a variety of different areas in the field of battle?
So we have a few different engagements going on with different levels of security within the government. The one that we just actually right now, if you go up to the DISA website, you can see that we've have a STIG that was just passed for official use only application of secure email data. What that does is it allows kind of either for official use only or I'm not looking in the camera. For official use only
it's okay.
class
This
users.
This is meant for information. Neither one of us are gonna make any awards for how beautiful we are. So it's fascinating. So the discussion is really interesting. So I wouldn't worry about it.
So to summarize, we have a few different levels of engagements going on with the government. The one that we just kind of received the certification around is for official use only, which is a tier in security right below secret. That allows kind of administrative, folks and people within the government to go access email and PIM information. We also have engagements going on to actually, do more deeper levels of security to allow infantry troops to go out and actually use the device. If you look at it, we're creating a platform. The platform allows us to go take Android applications, put them on top of it, so the government folks who are building Android applications could use this device and this kind of platform to go deploy, manage, and use them securely. So what we're finding is actually there are a number of in-house application developers within the government that are using the Android platform and the extra security capabilities that we've provided as a kind of foundation, and taking that into some really interesting places. It's fun seeing pictures of the device being used inside in theater kind of applications, people carrying them around and using them for real really highly secure but interesting kind of application.
Neat. Well, I've got a couple more questions, but before is this thing giving our soldiers some kind of unique advantage that the other side doesn't have? Is this opening a door in some way that's helping them either have a better work life or win?
Yeah, I believe so. If you think of there's a term that I've learned very, very closely over the last year or so, been working on this program, is being able to leverage kind of commercial off-the-shelf devices, right, and using them in kind of secure kind of environments.
Neal, can you
what that
repeat
allows,
sure,
commercial off-the-shelf. It's COTS devices, or commercial off-the-shelf devices.
Okay, thanks.
So what that would mean is basically you could take a smartphone with the latest technology that are available today and use them for kind of new applications. So if you think of smartphones today, they have dual and now we're getting up to quad-core processors with a bunch of different application enablers being provided. In order to use them and leverage kind of all that technology advancement and the cost structures that go with them, we need things like the secure mobility platform that we've put together. So in field, our soldiers can actually use applications that are leverage GPS and leverage the camera, leverage kind of high-end kind of video performance, right, to go perform their tasks.
Cool. What other unique applications and capabilities are available to the military, and how do they differ from what civilians get?
So we've seen a very interesting ecosystem within the government pulling together. We've seen a lot of applications integrating kind of a mashup of like taking a Google Maps type application and being able to pop up kind of a map of where different kind of insurgents would be like in a tactical operation. There are a lot of things that are just simple kind of data collection and presenting kind of things, where you want to make certain documents available across kind of all of the people within your group, right, or within your division. So there's a lot of operation around, or a lot of applications around kind of more of this mapping and navigation and kind of more of the mobile aspects of it, being able to take pictures, upload them with kind of information about what's going on in your environment, very context-aware type applications. And then also a lot of collaborative applications, things like being able to kind of share documents among a group, but then edit reports and kind of and get through kind of business process related stuff, but in a collaborative way.
Very cool. So, I have got some questions for you from my ZDNet colleagues. Editor-in-Chief Larry Dignan said that one CEO he spoke to said he uses iOS because he knows what it is, knows what it does, and it's consistent. Android not so much because there's too many flavors and customization. So Larry wants to know, how do you test for different device flavors and types of Android?
And is that from, so the community as a whole have done, there are a lot of different toolkits that people have used for managing kind of the device differences, right, when you go build an application.
Right.
That's one area, and we're working with providers. When we think of enabling our enterprises with being able to create applications, we have toolkits to go reduce the complexity of that device fragmentation. There's a lot of test and validation that's needed to make sure that the application can work among the different types of Android, devices, right? Android it's a double-edged sword, right? So with the flexibility you get in you leveraging the Android platform, you can do things like create a very secure environment and create, a platform that is very specific to customer needs. But then it also kind of opens it up to kind of a broad range of devices, where now you have to go test and manage kind of the differences between those devices. So it's kind of a little bit of a double-edged sword. I think the benefits outweigh the deficiencies by far. And from a Dell standpoint, we actually have toolkits and services to go help with that application migration and testing and validation.
Cool. So Larry is also curious about enterprise adoption of the Android platform. He asks, do consumers need to bring in Android en masse for enterprises to give it more of a footprint?
I believe so. If you look, Android has actually outpaced every other smartphone platform in market today, and we expect that to continue. So yeah, I think Android as a whole is kind of very important for mass scale.
Cool. Well, we also just ran a story showcasing, this is another Android critique. We just ran a story showcasing how most Android vendors don't bother keeping their customers up to date on the latest OS version. Jason Perlow of ZDNet's Tech Broiler recommends that handset vendors start to virtualize their OS environment. And so he wants to know, would the use of hypervisor technology on Android devices make them easier to secure for military and government use?
Yes, they can. I mean, you have to with hypervisor technology. There are two types of ways you can use hypervisor technology in a mobile. One is to do what you see in solutions similar, like Citrix has a solution there. VMware has a solution where you have a receiver on a device, and basically there's no data at rest on the mobile device at all. And so all the applications are kind of running from the back end and stream to the device. In those type of applications, user experience is usually bound by the quality and the data connectivity. Cool. And then also in kind of the the way the application renders on the device as well. So there's that type of application. The other way, we're working pretty closely with in pulling a solution together that uses a hypervisor technology to create different parallel kind of instances of operating system running on the device. So you can have the secure version, a secure image running parallel with a personal version, right? So kind of separating a corporate or secure environment from a personal environment.
That would mean you don't have to carry both phones with you anymore.
Right. And Dell has launched a program I believe about a year ago called DISC, which does this on desktops. So if you look in the government sector, it's not uncommon to go into a high-ranking official and see 4 different computers side by side. And the reason why you need that level of separation is to kind of keep the different classes of security data separate from each other at a hardware level. So what Dell has done together with a couple of partners is integrated a solution using a separation kernel that actually allows you to run at very high assurance and really in a robust way multiple instances of Windows side by side on the same box, and giving that really high level of data separation between the different images running on one box. So now you can walk into the same official's office and see one computer, but it's really separated by 4 different instances of Windows running at different levels of security.
So is that based on the Windows 2008 hypervisor, or is that based on something else?
So we've partnered with a company called Integrity Software, and they have a very high-level class kind of separation kernel. So this is a different type of ability to kind of separate instances running, but it goes down a level lower in the underlying OS. So it's a more high assurance kind of version of a hypervisor type approach.
So do you see the phones that are on the market today as having enough hardware capability to viably run a hypervisor and a virtualized or multiple virtualized environments?
We're getting there. We're definitely getting there. There are 2 things when you think of the hypervisor. One is the quality of the connection, right? The speed of the connection. And as LTE rolls out and we get more higher speed, more reliable networks, that will improve the user experience there. The other is with the processing power on the phone itself. We're going up to quad-core processors of pretty significant speed and horsepower. So the combination of those 2 will improve the experience.
So what kind of
some of the virtualization type approaches?
I guess what kind of carrier environment is existing in theater? If you're putting smartphones out there, are these folks aren't just running on top of a Verizon or AT&T network? What kind of they're running on top of a Milnet of some kind, I assume.
Yeah, and we've worked. So yes, there are different private networks or secure networks that we need to make sure that we interoper on, that we do that in partnership with our government customers.
Cool. Well, I'm going to move a little bit towards consumery kinds of questions, simply because you're an Android guy and we have a pile of Android questions. But I'll give you a chance to come back to this in a second. Let's see. Here's another interesting security question, this time from James Kendrick of ZDNet's Mobile News. He says he's interested in the recent use of QR codes to spread malware and would like to know how you plan to deal with that. And I presumably how Android plans to deal with that.
Well, if you look at, so that's actually a good question. We're contemplating kind of the malware in general, right, and the impacts of that within Android. And so we'll be rolling out a couple of solutions that deal with malware in general. QR codes is one place where that could come out. But if you look at the Google market as a whole, there are 250,000 applications, or plus over 250,000 applications in there, and what we've been working pretty hard at is coming up with ways to kind of mitigate all the threats, not just in QR codes, but across kind of location sharing and making sure that application data shared between different applications can be controlled, effectively. And so one of the foundations is kind of the mobile application platform that we've put in. We have actually a lot of controls to make sure that the software on the device meets some level of integrity checks and validation there. And then we put corrective measures, or the ability to have corrective measures, on top of that. So if a threat or if a specific application that was viewed as malware is presented, we know what to do with that and contain kind of that issue, down. So there's a couple. There's those two pieces. One is actually adding the kind of the platform capabilities to go deal with threats as they come up, and then the other is actually having a process to go detect different malware and instigate whatever kind of corrective measure you need.
Cool. Well, we're wrapping up. We've got a few more questions, and bringing this back to the consumer. Then, based on what you said, can our audience assume that just because Dell's Android devices are secure for government use, the regular Android devices we can all buy are also safe? Or, should I not give my mom an Android?
No, not at all. I mean, security is an interesting kind of thing, because it really depends on what type of information you want to have secure. Government officials need, pretty high level and high assurance kind of security frameworks, because the information that they're sharing is, usually of a very high level and important nature. But security down for a consumer is actually pretty important as well. Providing the ability to go encrypt kind of an SD card or any of the removable memory. So when my mother takes pictures of the kids on our SD card, someone can't just steal that card and then go post those pictures up on a website or something along those lines. So being able to kind of add the appropriate levels of security for the consumer or the customer is very important. It was something that we actually took pretty close care of when we architected the security platform that we've built all these on top of. It's a pretty flexible platform. Yep.
Is that just the Dell Streak, or is that pretty much any modern Android device that, the typical consumer can feel safe with?
Yeah, so Android as a whole has security capabilities built into it that are pretty good and can be improved on.
Gotcha. So, how can our audiences then protect themselves if somebody goes out and buys, whether it's a Dell product or something at their local store? How can they make sure that they're safe while using these phones?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one is making sure that you know what applications you're downloading on these devices is a very important thing that you need to do and be proactive about doing. I'll give you an example. If you go up to the Google Marketplace, you can download an application. The user interface actually tells you all the things that application has the rights to go do. What we're finding is a lot of people don't check and don't look at it, and they just say click install. It's one of the things is actually to go in and kind of look in, see what that application could be doing, and not install it if it's doing something that you don't want it to do. The other is that the ratings and rankings within the applications and doing a little homework before you install applications is pretty important. I have a 7-year-old son who he goes and installs every single application known to man right from the Google Market without doing any checks, and so he shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? So having some control over what application content actually gets installed on your device is super important, right? So that's, I think, it's more of, I think consumers have to be aware that these threats exist, and then you know, and look at, like, you know, what the application could do before it's installed on the device.
I have a dad in his 80s, and he acts a lot like your 7-year-old son in that context. It's just amazing what I find on his computer. All right, so let's look at a bottom line then for the consumer side, and then we'll go back to the military stuff, and then we're just about out. If a consumer is shopping for a new smartphone, and all other things being equal, is it safer to use an Android phone or an iPhone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to what I was just saying. I think, you know, as long as what you need to do is make sure that you know what the applications that you're loading on the device are actually doing. At a base case, I don't think there's much of a difference from a security standpoint. But, you know, the threats and vulnerabilities kind of increase and skyrocket when you put applications on the device that, you know, could take advantage of any issues there. So, you know, we need to make sure that we you know, inform kind of consumers, you know, that, you know, threats exist. You know, be cautious when you download applications. Same thing that you do on a Windows PC, you know, you should be doing on your mobile device, right? Threats exist in both, and you should look and make sure that before you hit install, you know what that application could do.
So in that context, talking about applications and talking about the military, almost every sergeant I've met is quite wise, and many JGs and privates I've met aren't. So are you able to prevent them from loading applications onto the smartphones you're issuing them, or is the same risk in the same place?
So yeah, in, you know, the notion of an application store and the controls that the government has on enabling different people to install applications on the device was looked at very closely when we created this end-to-end system. So we actually have a lot of controls within the platform and the end-to-end system that will reduce the application set down to things that are approved by the government for use on the device. And so we took a lot of care in that kind of use case, you know, primarily about limiting kind of applications down to what actually is approved for use by the government. And that's part of the process that we have included in this end-to-end solution.
So what happens if somebody has one of these things and decides to, like, root it and throw cyanamide on it? Are they prevented from doing that, or is that, you know, you're talking about a smart user can do whatever they want with it? How robust is the defense of the defensive systems here?
So we've gone to pretty deep levels. It would be foolish for me to say that a device is unrootable, but we've put a lot of controls in place to prevent that from happening. The other piece of it is actually all of the applications that we received on the device has a pretty high level encryption, you know, built onto it. We've passed through the FIPS 140-2 level certification for the encryption, both on the device and on the removable memory. And so that puts an extra kind of level of security around kind of the corporate data or the government data that's on the device.
Cool. Well, let's wrap this then and say, is there anything else you'd like to tell the ZDNet government viewers? Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave them with, and any further contact information you want to give them?
No, yeah, no, I appreciate the time, David, for being able to talk about this. You know, we're very anxiously leading in a pretty solid portfolio of devices next year, and all of these kind of capabilities and platform enablers will be brought forward. we're pretty committed into the mobile security space and enabling kind of our customers with the ability to kind of use the application environments and platforms that are available through Android and other OSs. So appreciate the time.
Okay, now you've just seen me push way too many buttons. Hang on one second, folks. Okay, that's that one. That's that one. That's that one. There we go. I promised you that there would be a moment of my not knowing which buttons to push, and I made it all the way to the end of the program before that happened. I just want to say thank you to Neal Foster, Dell's Executive Director of Enterprise Mobility Solutions. My name is David Gewirtz, and this is ZDNet Government. I want to leave you with an important message that I keep hearing over and over, both from Neal and from many of the other experts I talk to, especially in the Android world, which is to make sure that if you're going to install an application on your Android device, that you're very careful and read all the information about it, and maybe even do some web searching to find out a little bit more about what you're putting on your device, because it is risky if you put an application on the device. And so there are, of course, many non-risky applications, but you can find some applications that are pretty dangerous. And so homework is good, caveat emptor. The neat thing about Android is that it's modifiable in all sorts of very interesting ways. The problem with Android is it's modifiable in all sorts of interesting ways. But as we're seeing here with the stuff that Neal's working on, we're also able to get some amazingly secure systems that can be used in the field and in secure government environments as well. It just turns out that they need a completely different layer of software than the typical Ma and Pa would use. So Neal, thank you very much for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks, David.
And with that, I am going to end the broadcast, or at least try to. Here we go.